Presenters, you just got to go with it and have fun and yeah, let people squirm a little bit, but keep it family friendly. All right, and one last tip, hold the microphone. So the theme this year, if there is a theme, is previously at Saturn. And all of the slides, in fact, including this slide, came from Saturn 2015. So some of you may recognize your former selves in some of these slides, and if that's the case, then you can apologize later. And I don't know, maybe you'll even see one of your slides in your presentation. Hard to say. All right, questions? We got 2 empty slots still. But the first up will be Elcho Port, and the clock will start after you advance to the first slide. So if we can get presentation 1.
I'm supposed to stand up there?
You can stand wherever you want. Okay. It's not going to help. If you stand
My
up
goodness.
Here, you get the...
Oh, okay, that's actually a good idea. I don't need the stairs. My God, Owen, I'm more nervous than when I received the award. Okay, well, thank you all for coming out, and I wanted to discuss a topic that has been very close to me for a long time now, which is how to assess challenges and get to results. So we'll start with the challenges, obviously, and then after assessing that, we will share our results. So, this can be either a challenge or a result, depending on your point of view. If your goal is to go to the other side of the ocean, then it's a challenge, and maybe that was the challenge for the other people on the other side, and then this is the result. However, in many cases, there can be a number of modes that can be applied in any order. And you can have the airplane mode, you can have the sailing mode, and you can have the car driving mode, or you can even have the pedestrian mode. It's all a question of mindset. And to illustrate this point further, and this is an example of an edge case mode, which can happen to you, if you make the wrong architectural decision. And you end up like a big ball of mud, either being in the spectator mode or actually being in the participant mode, whichever your mindset is more likely to. Okay, and then we get to the results section of this, and I'm afraid it's unavoidable in the end, depending a little bit on which architectural decisions you are making. But yeah, that's I guess that's about it. And then there's only one thing to do. Get out of here using, of course, the railway transportation mode. Okay. So just to conclude, to conclude, and of course, any good talk is concluded with the cost-benefit analysis method, because let's face it, Rick Kaisman is one of the best presenters that we have here, and this is one of his pieces of work. Okay, so this is, when you compare the cost and the value of the various options that you have, the various modes, I guess, then you get into a mindset of, okay, I'm trying to go serious here about your stakeholders. Anyway, in order to avoid boring you further with cost-benefit analysis method, sorry, Rick, I will conclude with the mindset that is illustrated by this picture, and it's up to you to decide which mode this animal is. Is it a living one? Is it a dead one? Oh, I know, I remember. This is the dog that was on the boat that we had on the first slide. All right. Okay. The new dog. I have really no clue. Okay, coming back to the results of our various assessments. Oh, this is of course the assessment. Yes, of course, we are comparing, trading off the new versus the mitigated modes and assessing the end result of that, which then finally results in happiness. Right. Okay, thank you very much.
Are there more slides? No, that was, you actually did get to the end. All right. That was extraordinary. I think, especially for first thing in the morning. So next up, we've got Harold.
Okay, here we go. So, I am here to talk about why certain stuff is important in your software architecture. We're talking about things like application longevity. The applications that I work for, or the company that I work for, SATURN, you can get an old gold watch if you have been there for 25 years. Well, we have applications that are getting gold watches these days. So why is application longevity important? Well, you need to take care of it. And also, of course, expertise. Expertise is what keeps your cost down. If you have a team of very skilled developers, that will be much cheaper than having 100 developers with no skills. Customer delight. Well, of course, we always want the customer to be delighted. That's why we write software. We don't write software to shape the world in our view. We write software to make customers delighted. And we want to be quick about it. So quick time to market is important, because if we are not quick, somebody else will be quicker. Well, I work for an oil company. We're not very future-focused, but of course your software needs to be future-focused. And of course you have to do all of this with agility. If you have read your Kahneman, you know that he talks a lot about System 1 and System 2 thinking. So if you were to ask people to just briefly, what is 2.2, 2 plus 2, they will quite easily answer 4, I hope. But if you give them a few beers and get them into somewhere where they're not really comfortable, they might give a totally different answer, depending on the circumstances. And this is the beauty of the systems thinking of Kahneman. Thank you. And this is what, if I ever were to ask you, which of these two arrows is longer than the other? Your System 1 thinking would say that the bottom one is longer. But if you really analyzed it using your System 2 thinking, then you would see that they are actually equally long. And I think maybe also I'm mixing up my System 1s and System 2s, but who cares? And going back to the ilities, or the architecture qualities that we're looking for, we can see that upgradability is always important. It's one of those things where we don't really know what we're doing. You can see this here in the slide. Oops. here. If I do like this, no, it won't work. But there are other things that are also important, and you need to do your architecture trade-offs properly, so that you know how to trade off between security, maintainability, and upgradability, and all of your other ilities. Because otherwise, you might find yourself somewhere where you don't want to be. There are a lot of shipping containers that are lost every year because they are washed overboard, or because things like this happen. And this can be really bothersome when one of those containers contains something that you want to have. And this is also can happen in containers when we do infrastructure as code. Suddenly the containers, they just go away and we have no idea where they are. So that's when you need to really pay attention. Usually this is due to some kind of architectural flaw. This is one of my pet research areas where I spend a lot of time. I know I am always correct, and I know that I like to always try to point out the errors of others. So spending time on architectural flaw research is one of those things that gets me up in the morning. Yes. Economic analysis, not so much. I'm not a numbers guy. I like to just go up there and invent stuff. I mean, 78% of all statistics are invented on the spot. And that means that most of the economics is also the same thing, because economics is a religion. All that matters is what you believe. What you believe, you can make the numbers fit. So that makes it's totally different from software architecture. Fortunately, I don't have a background in farming. I know nothing about John Deere's, but I do drive a tractor once in a while, because once in a while my horse gets all over the place, and he needs food. And I'm very happy to see that John Deere has developed a new ecosystem, because it makes it much easier for people like me when we need to buy new spare parts for our John Deeres, because that has always been a troubled issue in previous years. Thank you.
Very good, Harold. All right, so let's see if we can crash PowerPoint again. Next up, we have Rick Kaisman.
So thank you, Elcho, for that great introduction. And today we're going to be seeing how everything is in fact related to the cost-benefit analysis method. But as everyone knows, you can't really talk about costs and benefits of architectural decisions if you don't know where you're going. And so the most important thing, first of all, is to talk with your stakeholders and see what it is that they want. And you know, a lot of times your stakeholders are going to think that they're the experts. And they're going to come with all the latest buzzwords, and they're going to talk about data models and green this and container that and deployability and so forth. But you have to ignore all those things because you're the architect and you know better. So don't listen to any of that. Don't let those stakeholders fool you. You need a kind of Rosetta Stone for translating whatever it is they think they want into what it is that you know that they need. Because you are, after all, the architect. So what you need to do is to give them the illusion that they are co-creating with you. And this is what we call buy-in. So remember, when you're dealing with those stakeholders, it was their idea first. That's co-creation. And to do this, to make this really convincing, you have to put up a lot of really complex-looking diagrams with many important sounding words. If those words end in ility, so much the better. because they've probably heard of something called ility before, and they don't know what it is, but they know it's good and they want some. And in fact, more is better. So if you can have more of these words on your picture, you're going to get that buy-in and you're going to get that co-creation. It's important to have a pretty picture. Let's face it. We need boxes and lines. But don't, by any means, don't explain it. Do not have a legend. Do not walk them through it. Don't do scenarios, because then they're going to think that that's a way of actually tracing through this and understanding it. And you know, you don't want to burst their bubble. So you're going to have to deal with their expectations, right? They're going to say, the stuff you created for the stuff you created for them last year, it's not scaling, it's not fast enough. And you're going to have to talk about all the challenges that you're facing, and they don't understand your pain, right? You're the architect, and you have to remember that you have to continually remind them how hard your life is. So, kind of like my life right now. So give them another PowerPoint picture by all means. This is going to help. This is going to get you through the presentation till you can eventually go back to your desk and do what it is you like to do, which is don't bug me, right? Leave me alone. I'm the architect. So what's ahead? How are you going to meet those so-called stakeholder expectations? What you have to do is negotiate. So I remember one time, a few years ago, Philippe Kruchten told me this story of how back when he was the architect for the air traffic control system rewrite for Canada, and he had this requirement from the official requirements document from the government that they had to meet an end-to-end latency requirement of 3 seconds from the time that a signal was received somewhere from a radar to the time it appeared on an air traffic controller's screen. And this was driving them crazy, and they were doing all kinds of horrible hacks to their architecture to meet this 3-second requirement. And finally, in desperation, he decided to trace back the source of this requirement. And he traced it back to one analyst in Ottawa. And he went to this guy and he said, "Why has it got to be 3 seconds? You're killing us." And the analyst said, "I don't know, 3 seconds sounded good, make it 6 seconds." So here's the point, is you got to deal with a lot of crap, a lot of dirt, a lot of dirty laundry, and it's your job to make it clean, to make it good, to make it fit in your vision of the ecosystem. Am I done? Or did PowerPoint crash again? Thank you for your attention.
So this is one of those things that I absolutely have no desire to do. But I felt a certain sense of peer pressure yesterday when the repeated, "Is your name on that yet? Is your name on that list yet?" And I finally gave in. The very thing that I tell my children not to do, I gave in to that peer pressure. So today I'm going to talk about evolutionary architecture. Right? It's a good theme for this week. Let's see. And the quest begins. So when we think about evolutionary architecture, we have to actually take a step back and understand where we've been. We have to help our clients understand where they're coming from, how their business is evolving. And just like you see this armada moving forward towards that brave new world, we have to set that vision for our clients. And sometimes, as we set the vision of where they're going to go, we have to avoid landmines, like talking about web content management systems. So, to call on some of the knowledge that we've already heard from folks earlier today, you always have to make sure that you do have nice, pretty pictures, even if they don't convey real meaning. You want to make sure that they're flashy, that the palette is really acceptable. So I really recommend bringing in a graphic designer, because they know how to make pretty colors. And there's nothing better than using your tribe, your people, and giving them an opportunity to grow and help you as you're building that evolutionary architecture vision for your client. And you do that by taking your junior staff and you give them the vision and then you turn them loose, hoping that they don't go out and Google every possible icon on the planet and put it onto the PowerPoint. Now, when that happens, one thing I like to do is say to them, could you at least make sure that the aspect ratio of those things are not too stretched? And another grounding principle for creating some of these wonderful, goofy, visionary graphics is that nothing should ever show up as pixelated. Oh my, so much text. So, one of the things that I've learned throughout my career is that the density of the slide reflects the intelligence of the architect. And you can never go wrong if you have boxes and lines. So we've been talking this week about evolutionary architecture. We've been talking about our need as architects to be able to communicate. Well, what communicates better than boxes and lines? Again, it doesn't matter what the picture says, it's just our soothing, calm voiceover that'll make all the difference. Constraints. Something our clients hate to hear about, but something that we absolutely have to bring to the table when we're talking with them. So some of the constraints that we might want to talk about are around the technologies, but we're painting a forward picture, so we might talk about why they hit some of those constraints in the past. We can talk about their organizational challenges that they face, but at the end of the night, we want our clients to know that constraints are not necessarily bad things, but they're the guardrails, right? They put the scaffolding around the decisions that we're going to make. This is me right before I got up here. And apparently, I must be amazingly smart because this is yet another very dense slide. So, as we talk about evolution, and I have to think fast on my feet, we can see that the angle of the stones and the angle of the tree are roughly the same in accomplishing the same goal. So, I don't know where to go with this, but as we look at how things have evolved from stones that happen to fall over the river to get across that precipice to a tree that was leveraged as a way to get across, probably pushed across, accidental at first, intentional, and then they went on to better engineering. Right? Are we done? Yes, we're done. That's my bucket list.
So Holly, this is your first time at Saturn, and
Yes. All right, thank you. I have no clue why I'm up here.
Is this your first time doing Slide Roulette, or have you done this professionally before?
This is my first time.
Okay.
I must say that I've never professionally, it's been a while since I've professionally given a presentation, so we'll see how this goes. All right. I presume I'm talking about architecture of some flavor, so we'll see what happens. Apparently I'm talking about trade-off analysis. I guess one of the trade-offs involves colors that you use on diagrams here. Wait, do I use purples? I don't know, I personally like to use a whole variety of colors on my slides. And I like to use acronyms. As many acronyms as possible, and if I can make them multi-layered, all the better. So, like doing that. Wow, this is a ton of layers. Don't really know. Well, to go along with your architecture, I mean, you clearly need a process flow. So, using many big boxes and buzzwords like web services, transformation, data validation, all this sort of stuff. And if you can have drawings of old computers to show that you're very experienced, sure to do that too. And begin with with the acronyms. This is wonderful. Okay, you guys clearly chose this for me. And to be able to keep going, I mean, clearly you need a coffee maker. All the better if you can create smart code to go along with it. Not sure why you need a pump with a coffee maker. Maybe there's a well of coffee that you're trying to, I don't know. So yes, I guess it looks fine, so apparently we're testing. I have no clue how to test a coffee maker other than to use it, but apparently you need to use IT. So let's see, again with the pretty colors on this diagram, I'm really loving this. So you need to look at your landscape if you're brewing coffee. Apparently you need to segment your landscape so that you can test different parts of the coffee maker. I think that's probably what it is. And you need a detailed view of the most important part of the coffee maker, which apparently correlates with people, so I guess that's keeping them awake or something. I don't know. But whatever you do involving coffee or business or architecture, you need to make sure that you're optimized, because otherwise you'll have congestion, and then far too many people are going to try to get to the counter at once, and then they won't get their coffee, and it'll just be bad news. They'll be grumpy. They'll be especially grumpy with a diagram like this. You do not want to describe your architecture with a diagram like this. First off, no colors, tiny print. Although it does look typewritten, so then you'll make them think, oh yes, this has been around for a long time, we're pulling it out of the archives. So, I'm gonna do that. And when you're pulling things out of the archives, you really feel like you're breaking something open, just writing something in stone and trying to pull it out from history. It'll be around for a long time, so make sure you do it well. Otherwise, people might not like it, and they'll look at it and think it looks silly or something. I don't know. Also, when you have great ideas, make sure to have continuous delivery. Well, you want continuous delivery with coffee systems. You want continuous delivery with your software. Definitely want to balance the load. If you get that one person who gets all jittery in the morning, definitely don't want to let them near your high reliability systems or anything like that. So let's see. I think I made it to the last slide. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, and no more? George.
Hello. So I sort of showed up a little bit late this morning and quickly drank some coffee, and Paolo came over and told me that I was doing Slide Roulette. It turns out that sometimes I have to come over here. Okay. It turns out Paolo tells me a lot of things. It turns out when you're drinking, apparently that's a legal contract. So if you say, I think Slide Roulette sounds like a great idea. So actually, since I'm not ready to do Slide Roulette, I'm going to actually tell you how the sausage is made. And so since I've been on a lot of calls discussing how the SATURN conference comes together, I thought maybe I should tell you about that. So the first thing to understand is that we all have X-ray vision, and we can see into the future. We have extra hardware that augments our abilities. But really, the person you need to pay attention to is Michael. Because Michael has it all nailed down. He's got a schedule. He's going to repeat that schedule every single time. It's going to work out. But sometimes John, chimes into the conference call, and he'll tell us that it's very important that we maintain our equipment. Because there's nothing like an old, decrepit hose, and that we really should make sure that we are plumbing our way into the future with a green hose. But you know, there's a lot of voices on the call. And so when EPEC gets on, she generally talks to us about funneling in and out. And by that, she generally means she drops off the call for a while to, you know, do something more important. And then when she comes back in, she says, I know who the next keynote should be because she's generated the candidates. And that generally works out pretty well for us. Okay. But you know, sometimes you know, Jorn can be, he's in a different time zone because he doesn't live in the United States. And so when he gets on the call, it's been a long day. And you know, he's been dealing with all the stresses of work and oil exploration and refining and everything. It's a very difficult business. And so when he gets on, it generally takes a while for him to get through his agenda. And he has a lot of things to chat about. You know, sometimes Linda is on the call, and she's really, in a way, the embodiment of history that flows through this. As the original sponsor of the conference, she knows where it came from and where it's going. She actually has a special script that she writes with, right to the left, using a special alphabet that she deciphered, she invented. And so it turns out that while we're always impressed with what she has told us, it generally takes many times of her repeating the same thing until we get it. Yeah. So you know, sometimes I show up on the call and I can actually contribute, and basically nobody understands what I'm talking about. It's not really clear I do either. Okay. Does anyone know what slide I'm on? I'm sort of running out of people on the program committee. So Paolo is also on the call. And you know, what he's most important, he thinks about the matrix all the time. And in fact, when I was walking up here, I was thinking about the matrix. I don't know how well you guys know the matrix, but I can quote various parts of the matrix. And there's a very minor character called Switch that dies on the matrix. And you know, I've been involved with like facilitating the slide roulette before, and I've always thought it would be fun to do this. And so when I was drinking, I said, I would love to do this. And I wasn't on the conference call when someone scheduled the slide roulette at 9 in the morning, which, you know, I thought was a bad idea because no one's funny at 9 in the morning. So in the immortal words of Switch, I would say, not like this, not like this. Has EPEC been on the call yet? Okay, who hasn't been on the call? Elcho gets on the call, and you know, Elcho always has it dialed in, and he's living in the future, and so he's always able to get the conference to come together at the last minute, and I hope that that's it. Except that you guys need to make sure that you unlock the doors before you fly out here today. Okay, thanks very much.
Outstanding.